Hi, welcome to episode 2 of the Horizon HowTo series. I'm here with Sander today, and
Good afternoon.
In this episode, Sander, what are we going to do?
Well, we're going to be taking a look at the image, so all the steps required to creating the perfect image and also deploying them through an instant clone pool.
Yes, and you are going to show us something on the lightboard about instant clones, right?
Yeah, let's go. Right, so today we're going to be diving into delivering that desktop. So we're going to be looking at instant clones, and we're going to be looking at how we're going to create that perfect image that we'll be working with. But first you'll need to understand how that works. So what I've drawn out here is the conceptual part for vSphere. On top of that, the hardware requirements. So that's our data store and our ESX hosts. So first off, when we start creating an instant clone, we need to have a machine to base it on. So that's going to be the master VM. And the master VM is basically the closest thing that gets to a golden image. And from this master VM, we'll be creating a template, which we'll also place here. And the template basically an instruction on how to install this machine. And from that, we'll be creating a replica, which is placed on the data store. And from this replica, we'll be creating a parent VM. And we'll have a parent VM for each of the hosts. So we'll draw these on top. And the parent is going to be a powered on machine. It's actively running. It's in memory of the machine. And it's actually on the in-log screen or the login screen for Windows, for example. So basically ready to go. And now, with the magic of instant clones, we'll be able to create copies from this actively running machine lightning fast. So I'll be drawing these on top of this. So from this, we'll be spawning many VMs. So all of these will be a VM. Wait, that's going to take forever. And we'll be creating these lightning fast. So that's going to be one machine per second. And because we are copying these from the memory, it's going to be not only lightning fast, it's also going to prevent boot storms. And also it's going to be a great way for recovery. But there's another cool trick, something that's new in the latest version of Horizon. And that is when the density of the amount of VMs on a certain host goes below 12, we can then remove the parent. And we can then create the machines directly from the replica. That's called parentless instant clones. Now what this saves is a lot of disk space, a lot of memory that's being in use, because we don't have to host this parent VM anymore. And it's going to only cost a tiny bit of a time penalty in creating the VM. Also, it's an automated process, so whenever the host dips between 12, it'll remove the parent, and when it becomes more than that, then we'll need it to be coming back. So it'll be an automated process in restoring that parent VM. So today, we're going to be building this straight up here. So let's go back to Agen.
Right. So in the previous episode, I mentioned in the last part to have a virtual machine ready with Windows 10 installed. As you can see on the screen here, this is my Windows 10 virtual machine. And I've already downloaded the Horizon agent from myvmware.com. I also downloaded the VMware optimization tool from the VMware Fling website. And today we're going to install the Horizon agent and then optimize the image to be published in an instant clone desktop pool. So let's start by installing the Horizon agent.
Yeah, and that's an important one, right? Because there's a certain order in which you need to install these agents.
Yeah, if you're going through the whole series, we're going to do Environment Manager and App Volumes also. And you first always have to install the Horizon agent, then following the Dynamic Environment Manager agent, and finish with the App Volumes agent, yes. But in this episode, we're only going to do the Horizon agent. Mm-hmm. If the setup is running, as it is, we click Next. We accept the license terms.
After reading it, of course.
After reading it, yeah. We use IP version 4, and as you can see here with Horizon 8, link clones are removed. So we can only use the instant clone agent at this time. You have several options to use geolocation redirection, almost everything. I always like to use the Horizon performance tracker, which is the thing I'm going to select, and I'm just going to click next. We leave this default, we click next, and we click install.
Sounds simple.
It is.
Yeah, and also if you want to make changes to this, you'd have to reinstall the entire agent and redeploy your image, right?
Yeah,
so
true.
If you want to turn on USB redirection, for example, which we didn't in this instance, then you would have to redo this.
Yeah, true. Yeah. So as you can see, the installation is finished. The system must be rebooted for restarting the agent. This should basically be enough to create a desktop pool, right? Because you have the agent and a machine, and it talks to the connection server right now. But we are creating an image, so we want a little bit more than just a basic Windows 10 installation. So I've gone ahead and I've already installed Microsoft Office onto the image, which I think is a must-have, because virtualizing Office, it's nearly it's possible, but
it's challenging.
It's
let's say it like that. So,
yeah.
So basically, the most commonly used scenarios is that you put that in your main image.
True.
The layer 0, so to speak.
Yeah, and probably another couple of applications, but that depends on the customer and how they want to build the image.
Yeah.
The next thing we're going to do, because we are running a full-blown installation of Windows 10, which comes with all kinds of Windows Store apps and all fancy, visible, graphical heavy settings. We want to optimize the system to have the best user experience and the best performance. VMware created a fling for this called the VMware OS optimization tool. Can you explain something more? What is a fling? Yeah,
that might need some explanation. So basically, a fling is a VMware developed tool, or it's community developed mostly, but also very much supported by VMware personnel. But it's not an official tool, so you can't get official support on it. However, if you go to the OSOT pages and you go through the threads there, it's basically our staff architects answering your questions on why certain things don't work. And I think the OS optimization tool is basically the best example of this. So it's filled with information on how to really optimize your image, and that makes all the difference for your performance. Yeah, you have like thousands of settings, right? Yeah. So the optimization tool has started. You have the possibility to select a template. In our case, we're going to use the default template created by VMware itself. If you want, you can use a public template. But let's first start with analyze the system on performance improvements that can be done. And these are like thousands of settings. One of the settings in which we want to use later on in the series is the search index. So let's search for the word search, and there's the search service. By default, this template will disable the search service, but because we want to use the search index to be stored on a writable volume later on in this series, we want to leave the search index enabled. So we deselect this and we click optimize. Great. The system will now be optimized. All settings that are checked will be done on the system to improve the user experience. Yeah, and this is something that can take quite a while. Yeah. Well, the optimization has been finished, but this is not all. We now want to finalize our image. We do this by clicking on the finalize button, and here you have all kinds of items that can be cleaned up. Like event logs. You don't want to have a full event log on a new instant clone, for example. We leave every setting here default. You can choose your own options. What's also important to be mentioned, we show this on the GUI, but the VMware optimization tool can always also be run by command line, in which case in a production environment where you
want to automatically build your image, comes in quite handy. So let's just click execute and finalize our image.
Yeah. I think this step is going to be very important in order to get the system as optimized and as clean as possible in order for us to be the best template for us to copy machines from.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So the finalization of our image is done. As the message shows us, it's time to shut down Windows, take a snapshot and create a pool, which you are going to do in a couple of seconds.
Awesome.
First I'm going to create the snapshot. So I click OK. Close everything, shut down the machine. And once the VM has been shut down, we can create the snapshot.
Yeah, there we go. The perfect machine, the perfect clean image.
So, take snapshot, give it a name. Let's call it instant clone image.
Great name.
And select OK. So let's hop on over to your screen and create a desktop pool.
All right. So as you can see, I've also started up a machine, and I'll be logging into the Horizon environment, and we'll be setting up our instant clone desktop pool. So in that case, since we don't have anything yet, we will be going to desktops, and we'll be creating a new pool. So we'll be adding one. So first off is an important decision to make, and that is whether or not you want to have an automated desktop pool, a manual desktop pool, or an RDS pool. So RDS are the servers, full-blown Windows servers where everyone works together, or we can have desktop pools, and when we want them have them automated, that'll mean that it will be automatically added. So that is obviously the best choice.
Right.
And we'll be using instant clones for this. You can create full copies of a machine if you would want to, but instant clones is the best and the fastest way to do this. Then we come to the choice of whether or not we want to use a floating or a dedicated pool. And the difference being is that a floating pool means that the device is always destroyed, and when the user logs on, he gets a completely new machine. But when we want to use a dedicated machine, the machine lingers on, it persists, and when the user reconnects, he ends up at the same desktop again.
So that's the difference between a persistent and a non-persistent desktop,
Exactly, right? Yeah. So we'll be choosing for floating. Since we're using vSAN in our environment, we'll be choosing the option to use vSAN. This storage policy management solution is for, well, as it mentions, storage policies. So vSAN can create policies based on whether or not something needs to run on a fast bit of storage or a slower bit of storage, and it can easily separate the replicas from the data disks. So that's why since we use vSAN, we can just click this button and Horizon will take care of all of that for us. But if you have a traditional SAN, you will use these options.
The viewer would select not to use.
Yeah, the viewer could probably use the option below, which means that your storage solution needs to select where everything goes itself. All right. Then we'll be identifying our pool. So first off, we'll start with an ID that's internally, so that can be an illegible thing that we designed. So a good naming convention would be it's going to be Windows. It's for this year in
It's the version of Windows we use.
Yeah, the version of Windows that we use. It's going to be for our production environment. So the display name will be the one for the viewer. So when he connects to the pool, that's what he sees. And
yeah, this is what the user will see in their, when they log on to either the HTML5 client or the Horizon client.
Yeah, so it makes sense to make this a bit more legible for the user. Right. So access groups basically is a way to manage your different groups. We're not going to be using that, so it's going to be empty. Obviously, we want to enable provisioning because we want the automated pool to be working, and also if there is a big error, I want them to stop and not keep copying machines. So the most important thing here is going to be the naming convention. So when we fire up new machines, what is their name going to be? I'm going to be basing that on the on the image that we had before, on the name that we had before. So it's going to be Windows 10, 20H2, the version, PRD. And then I want to have an automated number. And I don't want to remember that, so I'll use the help function here. And you can see there if we add this, so n fixed
is 3.
is
What
3.
happens if you do like the number 3, 4 or 5 or 1?
Yeah, great question. That's the number of digits that you can use behind that. So if it's going to be 1, our first machine will be W10 to 20H2 PRD 1. But if we use 2, it'll be 0, 1,
0, 2,
3, 0,
yep.
3.
Right.
So that's going to be the option. We'll be using 2 because I think that'll be more than enough.
Yeah.
Provisioning is also a smart way to look at it. So basically this is where machines on demand means that as soon as I need a machine, it's going to be added. So I can say that my pool is going to be a set amount of devices. I might not always need all of these devices, or I might do. So when I choose to create machines all up front, it'll automatically create these machines.
Yeah.
Now this is not something you want to do in a very large environment,
No.
but for our sake it can...
In a small lab,
could work.
this works perfectly.
Yeah.
We're gonna create like what, 5 machines?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll put the maximum of machines on 5 and the spare on 1. So the spare is always going to be 1 machine that's already provisioned, already powered on. So when the first user starts, he gets the best experience.
Yep.
We will not be using VTPMs because we don't have them at the moment. And then we come to the selection of our image. So this is going to be where we select the machine. And if you remember the light board through all the steps, we first have the master VM, that's what we created before. Then we're going to use create a template from the snapshot. That's actually what we're doing here.
Yeah.
So
here we're going to select the VM on which I've created the image.
yeah, and I'm guessing that's this one, right?
Yeah.
It always helps to know this for sure. And then we'll be choosing the snapshot. So that was going to be the instant clone image.
Yep.
The aptly named golden image that we created. And then we'll need to find a place in vCenter where we'll be placing these. So here you see the structure we made. So we got our own little folder, and I'll put them in the instant clone one. And we'll also have to select the cluster which we'll be working on. It's quite simple, and the resource pool that we'll be using, that's also a single one. And we will select the data store where we need to be, where we'll be saving all of our data.
Yep.
Well, as
Which
we
is
mentioned.
the vSAN data store.
Yeah, so we only have one vSAN data store. So that's all going to be nicely automated ourselves. And for the network, we get to choose whether or not we want to specify a certain network, or that we want to take use the same as the parent VM, which is what we're going to do in this example.
Yep. In larger environments, you would have multiple networks to separate servers from desktops and that kind of stuff. Yep.
Yeah. All right, we want our machine to be enabled. Connection server restrictions, that's probably not something we're going to be using here, but basically it comes down to, do you want to deny access to certain machines from certain connection servers? That's not going to be something that we do. Important though is the session types that we need to specify.
Yep.
So do you want to only allow desktops, so only allow VDI or RDS, or do you want to allow only applications, published applications? So in our case, we'll be using both.
Yeah, because we're going to create a published app from the same pool as we are creating now.
Exactly. Then also a handy log off after a disconnect. We can choose to do that immediately. That might not be the best case. So what's always friendly is to leave that for 2 hours or something. If a user is idle for 2 hours, he's probably not coming back, so then we can trash the session.
Right.
All right. And then I think we can continue on. Here's the choice for the protocol that we'll be using. So we'll obviously be using VMware Blast, highly optimized, very great on performance. If you needed a PC over IP, that's usually for more graphically intense. If you need to have very accurate pixel representation, then PC over IP can be used. It's always going to be very much heavier on the bandwidth use.
Okay.
And lastly, you can also choose Microsoft's unoptimized RDP. Do we want to allow our users to be able to choose the protocol? That's always going to be interesting. I'm not going to bother my users with it, but for certain use cases it can be interesting.
Yep.
And if you had the option for a graphical acceleration, that's something that you would be able to select here. And also cool, session collaboration. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, session collaboration means what it says. If I'm logged on, I can invite you into my session, so we can both work in the same session on probably the same document or something. So
yep,
that's what it does.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a native feature in Horizon, so why not use it when we have it? All right. Then we come to the settings for the Active Directory, where we
where the machines we are going to create in the pool are being located in the Active Directory.
Right. Did we have a specific pool for that? Yes, it's going to be the OU HowTo for Horizon, computers, and then the computers.
VDI.
VDI.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. And
we don't use log-off scripts. If you have something that needs to be done, a small script that needs to be run for completing the desktop pool, in which case we don't. You can enter the name of the script here, and it will be executed post synchronization or at power off.
Yep, awesome. So we won't be using those. Then we get our complete list of everything that we've selected.
Yeah. Do we want to entitle users?
Yes, we sure do. So we'll be going to the entitlements for this, and we'll be adding our users. So basically, they come down to a group within.
It's the Horizon user group we created earlier. Yeah.
Exactly. So that is, and we have to check that we're in the right group.
Horizon users.
That's just going to be Horizon users.
Yes, it is.
All right. Basically, just a simple user group will suffice. And now these users should have access to their new desktop.
Right. So all we now have to do is to wait for the desktops to be spun up and log on and see what happens. Yeah,
because that's an important thing. We mentioned in the Lightboard that it's going to take 1 second to copy a machine. The first creation of the actual instant clone, that takes a bit. Yeah, but after that, it's lightning fast.
Cool.
All right, and we're back in the vCenter console, and as you can see, we now have our 5 instant clone machines all fired up and ready, because we said that we want to provision those all up front, which means that we'll be able to log our user into those. Yeah. But now this is a complete desktop. It would also be fun to publish an application. So right. Just a certain application. So let's go back to Horizon, and then we'll go to Applications on the side here.
An application means that when a user logs on to their Horizon client or the HTML5 client, that they can start the application directly from the client instead of logging on to the desktop and then starting the application, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, so it appears to be running locally, but it is actually a full session on the background. Perfect for scenarios like myself, where I use a MacBook and I can't use certain Windows applications, even though I sometimes want to. Yeah. Paint.net. You can't live without Paint.net. So we're going to add a desktop pool, and we get 2 options. The first is RDS. Because that's basically where we used to get all our published applications from. Get a Windows server, install your apps on that, and then publish that.
But we created a desktop pool.
We created a desktop pool, and that's a new thing. Well, it's been around for I think about half a year. Starting from Windows 10, we can publish applications from a Windows 10 device.
Yeah, really cool.
And that is really cool because it really opens up new possibilities. Like we would be able to publish store apps, so universal store apps from Microsoft. We can publish these like that. So we'll take a simple example. So here it shows us a list in the image of all of the applications available. We did have Office there, but we're going to do it simply and go for lightweight, go for WordPad. And we will then have the same methodology we basically did for creating the pool. So we need to have an ID and a name that's more readable for the user. Yeah. And then we automatically go to the entitlements. Yes. That's obviously the same. We'll be looking for our Horizon users. which are over here in the ITQ lab. And boom, now they are entitled to the published application.
Wow.
Word app.
Really fast and easy, right?
It's so easy,
Yeah.
it's so fast. So what we're going to do, I'll open a new private window.
Yeah.
And now I'll go and visit our farm. So
Yep.
that was Horizon Connection Server 1.
Without
And
admin.
I do not want to go to the admin portal. There we go.
So this, we are using the HTML5 access right now.
Exactly, because I could be installing the VMware Horizon client, which is offered up here as well, which will give me way more benefits of like offloading and full support for peripherals. But for the purpose of today's video, the Horizon HTML5 access will do.
Cool.
And I will be entering my username and my password. So it's my admin account, but we're also regular users.
Yeah.
And I will now see the published applications and the published desktops that I have available to me.
Cool.
So here's my complete desktop from the production pool. So I'll fire that up, and that should bring us into the instant clone machine that we just created
Nice.
on our highly optimized image that we created. But what is a big but is that this is obviously still a pretty bare installation. We only have the desktop OS.
Right.
We don't have any settings on it. We don't have any added applications. Those will all come after that. But as you can see, we can log into our new machine. And it also shows that the HTML5 client is also very capable. So if you're on a machine that you don't have the possibility to install an agent on, just use this. It's very, very versatile.
Definitely.
So for now, I will be logging off, sign out. There we go. And we'll be taking a look at the published application. So that was Word app. When you're in the HTML5 client, you get this nice sidebar, which allows you to switch between resources. I will now start the published application for WordPad, and it'll just show me the application WordPad.
Cool.
Basically, in the browser here, if you do it with the agent, it's obviously going to look and appear like a regular, desktop application. Yeah. And there we go. So that's our entire application. So it appears to be just a regular Word application that I could be using
in the browser.
In the browser.
Cool. Well, I think this concludes our second episode of HowTo Horizon. In the next episode, we are going to add settings onto our environment, create a user profile. We will do this by using VMware Dynamic Environment Manager. If you want to click along, make sure you download the installer and the setup for Dynamic Environment Manager, and also upload the ADMX files which are located into the zip files. And we'll see you then.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, thank you.